Welcome back to Incubate Talent. Today we are continuing our journey across the North Alabama STEM learning ecosystem by spotlighting one of the more iconic places that's been making a difference in STEM in our community and across our state for many years, the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. Joining us today to tell us more about the Rocket Center, we have Dr. Kay Taylor, who is the Vice President of Education at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center and the NASA Visitor Center for Marshall Spaceflight, also here in Huntsville. Kay oversees the informal STEM education in the Rocket Center's Smithsonian-affiliated museum and the global education programs that include Space Camp, Aviation Challenge, Space Camp Robotics, and the U.S. Cyber Camp. She has oversight of the Rocket Center's archives, collections, and also leads the professional development programs like the Space Academy for Educators. She is also the co-investigator of NASA's EarthCam, an educational payload on board the International Space Station. Her background is media messaging and higher education, where she taught mass communications and research methodology coursework at Appalachia State University and the University of Alabama. She has presented and written peer-reviewed research and is the co-author of Mass Communications Ethics Text. Early in her career, she worked at a major metropolitan newspaper in Georgia, where she created all sorts of marketing and public relation campaigns in addition to reporting. She also served as a technical editor for a Georgia environmental firm associated with a Department of Energy and Department of Defense Superfund site in South Carolina. She serves on the Alabama School of Cyber Technology and Engineering's Foundation Board and is a member of the Alabama STEM Council. She holds a bachelor's degree in journalism from Auburn University, a master's degree from the Grady College of Journalism at the University of Georgia, and a doctorate in communication from the University of Alabama. Thanks so much for joining us here today. We hope you enjoyed this episode. All right, welcome back to Incubate Talent. And today we have a very special episode. We're welcoming Kay Taylor. Kay, thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome.
And we are here at a very special location today at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. Kay, how about we start there? Tell us a little bit about the Space and Rocket Center and where we are today.
Certainly. Glad to have you. Welcome to the Rocket Center. We are currently in the Davidson Center for Space Exploration underneath the historic Saturn V rocket, the rocket that launched America's space exploration off Earth. The Rocket Center itself has been a resource for the state since 1970. Before we landed humans on the moon, folks at Marshall Space Flight Center, the state of Alabama, and the Army were working together to carve out a place to commemorate the important work that Huntsville contributed to space exploration. So we opened our doors in March of 1970. Since then, the center has grown and expanded. We now have this beautiful facility where we showcase our Saturn V rocket. As we grew and expanded, we were able to add to our programming, and in 1982 began a little program called Space Camp.
Of course, yeah.
That started as a way to bring young people to STEM education and understand that through immersive engagement and hands-on science, you can really change people's lives. And so Space Camp has now celebrated its 40th birthday.
Wow.
We've had over 1 million young people come through our program in that time. And for the Rocket Center itself, we've had over 20 million visitors in our history.
That's incredible.
All with the mission of exciting people about space exploration and the power of the amazing human brain to achieve great things.
It's wonderful. So you said over 1 million Space Camp participants.
Yes, we have alumni association. We have chapters of alumni groups around the country. We've had 14 individuals who went on to fly in space and be astronauts. We've had young people come through who went on to become engineers, lawyers, teachers, firefighters, you name it. Because they come here, and in addition to learning about the importance of science and using your brain, they learn about using their gifts to contribute and solve problems.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what we do.
Going out into the workforce, man, it's exactly what you want to see happen.
Absolutely. We've we spend a great deal of time working with our students that come through and say, you're here now. Let's think about what your next steps are, and then what longer steps are. So how do you continue your education? What does that do for you? How do you find what really your talents are? And how do you plan to put those into action? And so, yes, you can look at it as workforce development. It also is enabling young people to take charge of their lives and contribute.
So you're describing the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. I mean, it's a museum, obviously. I mean, this wonderful facility, all of these exhibits, things not even on camera here. I mean, we're looking at lunar landers and other things around us. But so many educational programs, even beyond Space Camp. Describe some of those for us.
Right. So there are, of course, there are exhibits and artifacts around us, but there are also opportunities to get your hands dirty, if you will, with hands-on science. We have programs for all age ranges. We like to consider ourselves a center for lifelong learning. One of our most popular areas is called Spark Lab, and it is one of our younger learning spaces for typically age 3 to 5 year olds.
That young? Wow, that's great.
But what's amazing is you can walk by on any given day and you can find multi-generations working in that space because everyone comes in and gets involved. So you'll see children with siblings, with parents, with grandparents, with cousins, and it's just this hive of activity where people come together, typically younger people, come together and explore. And it's hands-on, it's inquiry-driven. They're given a problem and they're trying to work through it. They have to usually work together to achieve a
Teamwork,
positive
yes.
result. So that's just one. We have a maker space, and we have what we call Teen Maker Hour. So we're trying to stage our programs where they're reaching the learner at the developmental level they're at. We have returned live science in our main atrium. We have science on stage every day, a couple of times a day. You can come through, and there's someone doing live science on stage, engaging the audience. And then we have educational programs through our digital planetarium. We have one of the finest planetariums in the world.
Yes. Yeah,
and
wonderful.
they are creating world-class presentations that are all live. It's not canned. So each show is a unique live experience, and they will call upon the audience to help steer the show, guide the show. And then with our camp programs, Space Camp has grown to not only encompass Space Camp, but there is the other programs, Aviation Challenge, which has an aviation theme and leadership. Our technology programs, Space Camp Robotics, which is for our 9 to 11-year-olds, and then 2 cyber levels. So we have sort of lanes, if you will, to our programs, but they all kind of blend together because we're making cross connections. So you may have an element of cyber education in your Space Camp program. You may be in Aviation Challenge learning about satellite guidance and how that affects aviation. And you may be in robotics building a rover for a Space Camp mission. So, I mean, they all work together because science is like that.
Yes.
Science is everywhere. It's not simply a 50-minute experience in a classroom. Everything is science.
Right. Or one linear path where it's just science. It dovetails into so many different things. Or we talk about, the braided river as far as STEM pathways. And you mentioned even cybersecurity. I mean, that's something that is a industry in its own, but applies. It doesn't matter if it's aerospace or what it is, right? I mean,
we had a young woman come through our cyber academy, and at the end of the camp, I asked her. I said, "Well, do you think you might be interested in a cybersecurity career?" And she just looked at me and said, "No." Teens can be so blunt, and I'm like, "Okay." Well, and she goes, "I still want to be a nurse. But I think I can better serve my patients because I now know what I need to protect." with their information. And I was like,
Wow.
I'll take that.
Yes.
I'll thank you.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, not to go down a rabbit hole, but yeah, the aspects of patient privacy and those things are so critically important. Again, in applying something, whether it is cybersecurity or science, and helping add perspective to kids' lives and how that applies in an industry career that they might have an interest in, right? We're teaching some different skills.
We used to say that we're a thinly veiled workforce development program. I think we're more robustly embracing that right now and saying we are straight up a workforce development program. We're just backing that concept up, because what you're going to do, what you're going to be, you shouldn't start thinking about that when you're headed to college or out into the world. We really need to start working with our young people at an earlier age to help them identify their interest and their skills and help channel them into an area.
And it sounds like you're doing that. So let's talk about the students. I mean, you talk about the Spark Lab and the lifelong learners. I've heard, cradle to career, K through Gray, right? So what would be your central message to students? Whether it's things actually happening here at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center or just in general. I mean, getting that engagement early on, is that the most important thing, would you say?
Engagement and experiential learning. There are so many fantastic resources that are available digitally, and the opportunities for students to learn about topics is out there. But there is something so important about that mind-body connection, where you come in and you actually do it. You're in an immersive environment. You're in a location. That's the importance of informal science centers around the country, around the world. It's another layer to experience. In a classroom, our classroom teachers work so hard to prepare our students, and they have a curriculum that they work with, and they work with the parents, and they work with the students. This is another layer that helps support what's going on in the classroom, and provide an experience for a young person, whether they're 5 or 15 or 35, to come through and really learn by doing. And I don't know about you, but in my job, I don't just sit around and think about theoretical problems. I don't do a lot of word problems at my desk.
No, or worksheets.
Worksheets.
Right.
I haven't done a worksheet. Well, there's some Excel spreadsheets in there, but
some PowerPoints.
Some PowerPoints. But typically worksheets, no. It's about approaching a problem or an issue and assessing what needs there are, assessing what resources you have, assessing what talents you have with yourself or others, and then solving the problem. And that's what STEM is solving problems for the betterment of a person, an organization, a community, a nation.
Spot on. Could not have said it better. And I mean, this is we're going through this first season. That is a common theme, those foundational skills, and it's not something that can be just learned sitting at a desk, working through a worksheet. Those things that you're creating, teaching those foundational skills of problem solving and teamwork, and it has to be a hands-on exercise or something, bringing those kids together to be able to do that.
Yeah, concrete results. I mean, we often hear that Alabama is a state of people who work hard. We do work hard, and we think hard, but it's more than just a theoretical exercise. It's an application to a theoretical exercise. That's what STEM is.
So let's talk about teachers. Would you carry on that same message in how to create those hands-on things? What would be your central message for teachers about how we're whether it's implementing the modern classroom within their setting or getting out of the classroom into beautiful spaces like this? What would be your message to teachers and educators?
We support our educators across the board, and here in Alabama, we have the wonderful opportunity to bring Alabama teachers to our professional development program that is Space Academy for Educators. It is literally space camp for teachers. As they come, they stay with us for 5 days, they wear the flight suit, they eat in the crew galley, they launch rockets, they go on space missions, and in addition to allowing them to be 12 years old again, we work with them, providing them with resources to take back to the classroom, making industry connections for them, equipping them to take back into the classroom these extra experiences to, again, supplement the curriculum they're already engaged in. But more importantly, the secret sauce of that program is that it takes the educator out of their comfort zone and puts them in positions of uncertainty, which is where that creative process can really flourish. If you are working with a class and you feel like you're the expert and you're in charge, that's one thing. But when you're in a position where you're not quite sure what's going to happen next, will the rocket launch? Will the mission succeed? Will the egg make it with a parachute? I've had so many teachers say, coming through this program, love the resources, we're going to use it in my class, fantastic. But they say that experience of being a learner again, said it really made them recognize the challenges that a student can encounter that we don't know the end of the outcome. But often if you're a teacher and you're working with a curriculum you're very familiar with, you know the outcome. And so we give them that. And then we're working with them to help them facilitate inquiry-driven classrooms, which is where it can look like chaos in the moment, but inquiry is investigation. And investigation is the heart of the scientific method. Investigation is key to the engineering design process.
Certainly, yeah.
And the bottom line is with an investigation, before you do it, you don't know how it's going to go. Your hypothesis may not be supported. Your solution may blow up. So it's empowering those teachers to go back and work with that creative tension. And that's what the modern classroom is about, is facilitating the investigation with an end in sight, but not a predetermined end. It's not a worksheet.
The pathways to get to that end could be different
Absolutely.
for you, right? Yeah.
Science, our innovations of the 20th century are all built around spectacular failures. The rocket we're sitting under did not just magically appear. It came through trial and error and not a few explosions before it successfully launched.
So you're creating that spark for teachers, right, and students, and I mean for teachers especially. I mean that's interesting because I'm sure as they're going through the day-to-day in a classroom and putting them in a setting to kind of recreate or reignite, right? A question we ask everybody on here: what was that spark for you? If you go back even to your childhood, do you recall specific things that was that spark that led you down your path or specific to STEM?
There was a day in my childhood where I was at my grandparents' and I noticed bees were feeding on the clover. And I thought, I wonder if I could feed these bees. So I went in the house, asked my grandmother for a plate and some honey, and I went out and laid in the yard and watched these bees as they began to devour my honey. And then I went back in the house and I got a notebook. And I started writing down what I saw and what I thought was going on. And that, for me, as clear as day, was observation, reflection, hypothesis, experiment, conclusion.
All of the above.
All of the above. And that was one random day. And I had some great teachers in my educational process. I grew up in Marshall County, which is one county over from Madison County. I had a phenomenal 7th grade math teacher who made math made sense, who made math make sense at that critical point when you're moving from arithmetic to algebra.
Yeah, math changes a lot at that middle school.
I had
age.
a biology and physiology teacher who was a terror in the community. She was the hardest teacher. Loved Miss Brasher. She was fantastic, and opened the world of biological taxonomy and systematic study, and really made the scientific method come alive. And then also in high school, I had two phenomenal English teachers that stressed
English, really?
if you could not put your thoughts together, you were limited. So I started out in the sciences and was very nearly a microbiologist, and pivoted because I realized I liked translating data and bringing people to concepts, and so ended up then in media. But as clear as day, I remember my STEM experiences. I've got some real vivid memories of a fetal pig in physiology, but they were all good.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always great to hear just the personal stories, and it's amazing. I mean, folks most can remember something from
Yeah.
early on that was really that pivot point of it leading down interest in STEM, and then of course there's a ton of influences that we
Yeah.
have, teachers and others.
And I'm not going to lie, those four teachers were so important. But I'm not going to lie, Carl Sagan's Cosmos also sparked a lot of wonder.
Yeah, okay.
So, Alabama Public Television running Cosmos. Wow.
Did you spend a lot of time watching that? I mean, that was
Absolutely. And then turned on a love of reading and read a lot of science and a lot of natural history as well. So.
Well, thank you again for sharing that. So if we take a step back, and this isn't something that has to be specific to the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. Obviously, you're a member of the STEM Council and just an education leader in this state. Let's talk about some of the successes and areas of need. So what would you take a step back and kind of point at? What are we doing right today in STEM? Some things that you would want to spotlight.
Right. Well, for starters, this podcast and the work that the STEM Council is doing to, I think, reach across the aisle and realize that an educated, productive citizenry is not going to be built in a classroom alone. It is going to take involvement from our industry. It is going to take involvement from our community, and we can never separate our parents from this discussion
Right.
too. I mean, we all have to work together to achieve these goals and provide the opportunities for our students. If we don't, we aren't giving them all the opportunities that most of us espouse we want to do. I think we all would say, doing right by children, that's a good idea.
Let's get behind that.
So finding ways for these different groups to come together is important, and I think that's one of the things I'm so impressed with the STEM Council today.
Same.
Bringing in educational leaders, bringing in industry leaders, bringing in our political leaders, and having these conversations, and then finding concrete solutions. So the talk is nice, but where the rubber hits the road, and having industry participate and support. Here at the Rocket Center, one of our great strengths in this area is that we have so many community partners who call us and say, how can we help? We understand you have space camp programs going on. We understand you have a makerspace. How can we get involved? How can we help? That open hand has been invaluable, and we've worked with our industry partners so that we speak about their needs, their challenges, and their requirements in the appropriate way. To give an example with Space Camp, we're working closely with Space Force, something that a lot of people know exists, but they don't quite know what it does. We're working with Space Force to bring what Space Force does, what Space Force needs, what Space Force is not, into our aviation and space programs as a way to demonstrate yet another avenue. If you're interested in aerospace or aviation, there is yet another avenue to pursue that literally 10 years ago did not exist.
Right. As an agency and just as a career path, right? And that's, learning, helping teach students about those different career paths and adding perspectives, but working with industry to get those requirements and make sure that we're teaching the right skills, because, they're going to end up hiring them one day. Yeah.
And as I mentioned, this infuses all our programs. So in our makerspace, where we may have a 9-year-old working with a 3D printer. Well, a 3D printer is a fantastic technology, and you can make a lot of cool things with it. But the goal is not just to 3D print something, it's to understand that that additive manufacturing process is what underlines modern industry today. And so if you enjoy working with a 3D printer, you may see the application in working with NASA on building habitats on other worlds. You may see the application in working with Toyota Mazda in creating the cars of the future.
Yes.
It's making connections and making the science come alive, the technology come alive, and it certainly makes it a lot more interesting because it becomes visceral, it becomes physical.
Right. So we have to talk a little bit about what you all are doing with 3D printing real quick. You were telling me before this, obviously there's some renovations going on with the shuttle, but you were telling me before this, something that I didn't know about how y'all are refurbishing the shuttle or even recreating the shuttle. Tell us about what's happening.
Now you've got me started.
Yeah.
No, it's a great story. We have had on property a shuttle stack, meaning a shuttle orbiter, 2 solid rocket boosters, and an external tank. If you've driven by 565, you've seen our shuttle in the parking lot. Well, the orbiter that was on top was actually the armature, the metal substructure, was the artifact that NASA used. They clad it they clad it to make it look like a shuttle, and it was the artifact that NASA used to fit test all of the facilities at NASA to fleet up building the shuttle program. Our shuttle did not fly to space, I'm sorry to say, but it was important in helping develop out the processes that would allow our shuttles to be built. Well, it had sat out on display in the hot Alabama sun for 30 plus years, and it needed to be refurbished. So we brought it down and we stripped away the fiberglass and the plywood that was there, and we are 3D printing a new shuttle
incredible.
Skin. So we have these panels that are lightweight foam with a reinforced plastic mesh. And it's more durable. It's going to last 50 plus years, even in this hot Alabama sun. And so we say we have Huntsville's most Huntsville jigsaw puzzle on our property because we have 500 plus pieces that will come together and will give the appearance of Space Shuttle Discovery. That's the model we used. And then we have a company that works with Disney and Universal that is going to come in and finish off the patina so that it will look like a shuttle. So if you saw it when it was up, it looked okay. It's going to look better than it's ever looked in its life. But yes, in our museum exhibit, we're now using additive manufacturing to build a space shuttle.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That is wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I thought that was just so cool.
That's so Huntsville.
Yes,
That's
it is.
just so Huntsville.
What better place for that to happen? Yeah. So let's talk about areas of need. Again, as a STEM leader in this state, and the leader of this wonderful place, where do you see some of the areas in need and challenges that really we need to focus on overcoming in STEM?
accessibility, buy-in from communities. Every community has STEM leaders. We need to get them to the table. Again, the work of the STEM Council is important. In Huntsville, we have benefited, and our schools have benefited, and our community has benefited from an engaged industrial base. Our partners come forward. That needs to be I don't want to say the model for the state of Alabama, but what goes on here can happen in all communities at some level. There is in a community that has a hospital or a community health center, you can talk about patient privacy and cybersecurity
Yes.
in those environments, and they probably have someone on staff who that is their job.
Yeah.
How do we connect those people with what's going on in the schools? Having the conversations and finding concrete ways to work together. As I said, we're so blessed in this area. When we began our cyber camp, we were able to work with the FBI, and the FBI was so impressed by what we were doing with a 5-day STEM camp based, built around cyber, that they came forward and we signed the first MOU that the FBI had signed with a non-governmental organization
To come to Huntsville.
to come and participate in our cyber camp. And
Wow.
each week in cyber camp, an FBI agent comes in, spends about 45 minutes with the students, and it's amazing. So that was the Bureau saying, how can we support? There's some enlightened self-interest there. We have 15 to 18-year-olds in our advanced program who are trying to determine what they want to do. And the FBI is able to say, if this may be an area of service you're interested in, this is what we're looking for. These are the skills we need. And we have students that leave here saying, I'm going to pursue this pathway. They may look at going into law enforcement for a bit, but they all are now thinking, how do I get to the FBI? How do I make that leap? And we try and lay out some pathways for them. It's the same with our industry partners that come in. We say, this is what these companies do. This is how you can contribute. And so many young people, whether they're in that awkward adolescent stage where just nothing seems to be going right, or where they're facing leaving high school and having to make decisions for themselves, so many young people want to find a way to make a difference and do something of value. And that's one of these industry connections. It's a way to show work that makes a difference, and how to prepare yourself to step into that role or a similar role.
And the sooner we can create that perspective in their lives, the better. Right. And
So the pipeline that we speak about is not just laying out the steps. It is fostering that environment where the student can see their role and can own it. The pipeline makes it sound like, they get in a tube and shoosh, they're off, but it's making those connections and helping young people and their families get it. And because then you have a student that's motivated, you've got some familial support, and they're on their path. So making connections and helping our students in whatever way, from the family, from the community, or from the industry perspective.
Well, I completely agree, and agree as well about just what the STEM Council is doing and the formation of these STEM ecosystems, and the concept of a regional STEM ecosystem is critically important too, because you're right, Huntsville is very different than other ecosystems that might be elsewhere throughout the state or the United States. And so how do you cross that geographic divide through a digital means? Or
right. Well, I think one of the another benefit of the STEM Council is they're trying to get their arms around what opportunities exist in Alabama. At the Space and Rocket Center, we will see, hundreds of thousands of guests come through the center each year. Many are not from the state of Alabama. They're traveling, or this is a destination for them.
Yep.
But for our citizens of Alabama, the Rocket Center is a resource for the entire state. There are challenges of transportation, but understanding it's not a resource of Huntsville. It is a resource of the state. One of the things the STEM Council is working to do in creating the ecosystem is getting their arms around all of the opportunities that exist and finding ways to make connections. As an example, in our case, the state of Alabama has provided funding for middle school students from each legislative district to attend space camp at no
really?
cost. There's
Oh.
an application process. It's called the SALSA program. Space Academy for leading students of Alabama.
Salsa.
SALSA. So that is a statewide resource that we're promoting, but we need to let all areas of the state know this opportunity is there. The legislature also provides funding for Alabama teachers to attend Space Academy for Educators at no cost. So each year we have about 128 teachers from across the state will spend a week with us and go back excited about space, excited about STEM, equipped to bring in new resources, and with a renewed passion for what they do. So again, that is a statewide resource that I wish more people knew about. I mean, we promote it, but that's one of the things that the STEM Council, I think, can help do, is be that common resource, that common repository.
Yes.
So I think, the concept of STEM near me, a teacher or a parent or a student. Students they're precocious.
What events are happening?
They can go in and they can look around and find connection points. And I think that's so important for the ecosystem, is creating that mesh of connection points to make it easier and easier to participate and harder not to participate.
Yeah. So these resources for the state, talk about some of the things that you all are doing to help deliver those resources outside of Huntsville, because I guess one of the challenges, right, is not everybody can come here, right? But what are some of the things that you all are doing, or challenges that maybe you faced that led to y'all maybe thinking differently, and okay, now we need to deliver these resources in STEM to the classroom, through a different means?
We have been growing our digital opportunities. There is something irreplaceable about coming to the location and sitting under a rocket and working together with your teammates to achieve a goal, to improve your communication skills. There's something there that's irreplaceable. But there are ways to expand and add on to that experiential moment. And we've done that with some digital education, like the rest of the nation. During COVID, when we were separated and isolated, we developed some STEM engagements that we pushed out. They're on our YouTube channel. You can find them on our website. It was a program called Science Never Stops.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was digital engagements, some as brief as 3 to 5 minutes with a very simple experiment, some a little more involved, some were interviews with STEM professionals about their career path and what they do, some with concepts about like a STEM journal of how to map your own path. We have those available. We promote them with our educators. We promote them in our museum. To be able to reach a student or a teacher where they are is important. Our gold standard is to be able to bring people here so they can experience the space. But even after that or before that, to add additional experiences at different points in the conversation. We're growing that. It takes coordination and it takes some staff, and I'm happy to report that we are back to our pre-COVID employment levels.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah, it was. In particular, museums and science centers were hit hard with COVID, and we ended up losing about 90% of our employment, and just had to work our way back. But we are back. We had people in the community and industry partners coming forward. We had a GoFundMe campaign in the community that raised money to keep the lights on in this center because it is part of the community.
Yes.
But as I've said, it's a resource for the entire state. So we've come back from that. We realized that a digital platform is vital. We're dealing with learners who are digital natives, and
different generations,
and they are able to uptake information from digital engagements in a way that you or I might be a little challenged. I'll speak for myself. I would be challenged. So we know that that is meeting the student where they are. So we're trying to blend. We're trying to blend our development. It takes a little coordination, and it takes really talented people, but I am happy to say I have a talented team of educators who love taking this message to very young learners with a science literacy series for 3-year-olds, to our maker spaces, to live science, to our space camp programs, to our professional development, to our community events. Our planetarium does a Friday show called Cocktails and Cosmos. That is for.
I've seen it advertised.
It is for an adult population, and that is a custom show on Friday nights, and it is aimed at adults. It is the leading edge of our planetarium's team. And their digitizations that they do. They live fly you through the universe, and they worked with Northrop Grumman, who supported the development of a solely dedicated James Webb planetarium show. It was one of the first planetarium shows devoted to James Webb, and Huntsville, Alabama, led the charge on that.
I'd love to see some of that footage.
It's amazing, and so we're trying to reach all people where they are, and just find ways to have conversations. Ultimate goal is helping our young folk proceed through and find a way forward. But it doesn't happen in a vacuum. If parents can get excited about STEM learning, if teachers can get excited about STEM learning, if industry can step in and highlight what they do, and then our political leaders see how it all works together, that's what will create an ecosystem that will make Alabama stand apart.
Yes, yeah. So you mentioned the planetarium, and we're talking about, I guess I'll reference a resource from the STEM Council in the modern classroom, right? Mm-hmm. And we're talking about digital means, but you all are doing some fascinating things with the planetarium. You're going on the road?
Planetarium. We have a inflatable planetarium, and our planetarium staff go and lead a live show. So we've been doing some site visits and going around the state. We were at the Maxwell Air Show in March. Our group just got back from a school in Mobile, so we're able to do that. And our planetarium team also have the capability to go into a classroom yes, they can lead a guided experience in the classroom and allow for students to ask questions and engage. The planetarium team is doing amazing work. I think they're a little more digital natives themselves, so it's a
younger
talented team
leading it. Yeah.
And they the team was in Salt Lake City, doing a Domecast to 4 continents and 27 countries on the return of the sample return
Oh,
from asteroid.
yeah.
And they were at the eclipse in the Path of Totality in Bentonville, Arkansas, with NASA, leading some of their eclipse educational training. I believe David Weigel, our planetarium director, I believe he was on Arkansas Public Television leading educational sessions, while the eclipse was going on. So the planetarium team have expanded our capability, and they are really, because their product is digital in nature.
Mm-hmm.
It is a digital visualization of the universe. And if you go to Our Place in Space, they launch you from Huntsville and will literally take you to the edge of the universe and back with amazing NASA data and NASA visualizations that they have scripted into shows. And so they are well placed to really lead our efforts in what digital engagement looks like, because their product by nature is digital.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, the digital means to deliver STEM directly to students, no matter where their geography is. But I mean, you all are taking a regional STEM ecosystem, something in North Alabama, and finding ways to get it into other areas, not just of the state, but really across the globe, it sounds like. And
Absolutely.
That's wonderful, okay.
Absolutely. We are the Rocket Center was established as the Alabama Space Science Exhibit Commission. We are technically an agency of the state, and we look at our mission. Our central mission is serving the state of Alabama from the mountains to the Gulf. But because of the popularity of what we do and the interest in space and technology, yes, we're a resource for the Southeast, we're a resource for the nation, and with our Space Camp alumni around the world, we're an ambassador for good, we like to think, for the state of Alabama.
So we've talked about industry all throughout this episode, but what are some key things that you would point out about industry engagement, how they can help expand STEM, whether it's specific to the center or just STEM in general in Alabama?
It is realizing that they can impact, they can influence the future. As I've mentioned, we're blessed to work with strong industry partners who step forward and say, I want to help, but what does that look like? And we're very good at saying, you can do the following, But for industry, sometimes it is not funding. Sometimes it is a human face, making the connections for a student. And with industry, we usually say, unashamedly, if they're coming to our house, find some of your younger engineers, because for students to be able to see a new career or a early career specialist is so powerful.
That identity is important.
Absolutely. They don't want to hear it from me. Right. I'm an old lady, but we work with the industry, and we say, bring in some of your early career employees.
Yeah.
Have them speak about what they do, why they like it, and how they got there, because that shrinks that gap. And if a student can identify with the role and the job by identifying with a person, that makes the difference. That strikes the spark.
Yeah, and even if it's just one kid.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
and there are ways, again, to make connections across the board. In Huntsville, there is so much aerospace and aviation, but there is also medical. There is financial institutions. It's across the board. There are retail organizations that can bring in a STEM component. It's just making those connections with the students. And it's good business because that is where the future workforce is.
Yes. Yeah. It's cultivating that next generation, those that they're going to hire.
Yeah.
But getting involved in those communities,
Yeah.
right? So let's talk about the communities. I mean, is there anything else that you would have as a call to action to a community to be able to help ignite a regional STEM ecosystem, or just help write the next chapter for STEM within their region or community?
I think it's having conversations and figuring out what it looks like for each region. Huntsville is different from the southern portion of the state, is different from the northeastern corner of the state, is different from the midsection of the state. Having community discussions with industry, education, and your civic leaders, and figure out what it needs to look like for each area. What are the needs for each
they're
area?
all different.
And they're all different.
Yeah.
And then bring in not just public education, but your higher education resources. Alabama is blessed to have outstanding four-year institutions. We have an amazing community college system throughout the state, one of the strongest in the nation. And then with the new jobs and the new industries that are coming online, there is digital education options that weren't there 10, 15 years ago. So having those conversations of what exists, what do we need, and how do we get everybody talking? Because it's going to be a community effort, but the one thing we can agree on is we want the best for all our children.
Right. I think everybody can agree on that. And it takes a village, it takes a community.
Yeah. And it takes all of our best efforts. And when you're all working together, it's not as hard as it first appears.
Certainly.
So.
Well, Kay, thank you so much for your time today. Are there any final thoughts, events, those that you'd like to thank or recognize?
Just getting ready for a busy summer. Would like everyone to know to check out the SALSA program, which is an opportunity for Alabama students, the Space Academy for Educators, which is an opportunity for Alabama teachers, to know that we have public education programming here at the center. We have the Space Camp programming. We have an amazing planetarium, and we seek to carry the STEM mantle forward. That's what we do here. We'll also sell you a T-shirt. But we're so pleased that the STEM Council elected to come and visit us here. We hope to see you all this summer, and this is important work. We have so many resources and so many hardworking people in the state that if we can coordinate our efforts, the sky's the limit of what we can do for our children.
Yes, yeah. Okay, thank you again for joining us and for letting us shoot here at this wonderful facility, and for everything you all are doing. I mean, it really, you all seem stronger than ever and are making just such a huge impact in STEM.
It's a privilege to come to work every day.
Okay, thank you again.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it. Yeah. Thanks again to Kay and the U.S. Space and Rocket Center for hosting us and allowing us to film on location to learn more about the amazing work that they're doing in STEM. Please check out the description for this episode for more information about the Rocket Center, Space Camp, SALSA, the Space Academy for Educators, Cocktails and Cosmos, and more. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe and share with others and help connect STEM across your communities. Incubate Talent is powered by Teshalon Solutions and its partners, a collective of organizations who aim to spotlight the countless STEM programs offered by schools, nonprofits, and industry by aggregating the stories of educators, students, professionals, and communities through a digital means. Thanks again for listening to Incubate Talent and helping build your STEM ecosystem.